Tonight, a rapist who walked free from court will have his sentence appealed. Scotland's Lord Advocate says it was unduly lenient.
What we don't want is this to set a precedent for how these guidelines are going to be interpreted moving forwards.
Also making the headlines, the police watchdog is investigating the death of the pregnant teacher Morel Sturrock as officers confirm the body of her partner, wanted in connection with her murder, has been found.
Gorgie Farm asked the public not to give up hope as they continue to search for a solution for its reopening.
And ahead of the King's coronation, a Glasgow pub claims it's sitting on the real Stone of Destiny. I'm John Mackay in Glasgow.
And I'm Emma Cameron in Edinburgh. This is the STV News at 6.
Good evening. Scotland's senior law officer, the Lord Advocate, has described the sentence issued to a convicted rapist as unduly lenient and has decided the Crown will appeal the decision.
21-year-old Sean Hogg escaped a prison sentence and was instead ordered to 270 hours of unpaid work earlier this month, following his conviction in March for raping a teenager in Dalkeith. Ivana Holland reports.
It's been 5 years since Sean Hogg raped a 13-year-old girl here in the grounds of Dalkeith Country Park. He was aged 17 at the time. It was that mitigation that led the judge to issue him with community service and allowed him to walk free from court. A decision that left the survivor asking questions of the justice system.
It's been a difficult 4 weeks for my client. She was left shattered by the sentence. She asked the question and she still doesn't understand. Nobody's given her the answer as to how it is that someone who raped her when she was 13 years old was able to walk free. As far as she's concerned, the police, the prosecution, and the jury did its job, and yet in the end she feels she was let down by the justice system.
Well, today the Lord Advocate announced the Crown will be appealing the sentence issued by Lord Lake at the High Court in Glasgow earlier this month, describing it as unduly lenient. In a statement, the Crown Office said sentence is quite rightly the domain of the independent judiciary. However, the law provides for some limited circumstances in which prosecutors have the right to appeal sentences. Well, some campaigners say that they hope that this case in particular will not set a precedent.
I think the girl herself has said this about why would somebody report and put themselves through. For her, it was 4 years of this process hanging over her head for this outcome. I think the decision was completely the wrong one. And I think it's a real concern about if the sentencing guidelines are being interpreted in this way. What we don't want is this to set a precedent for how these guidelines are going to be interpreted moving forwards, because that would concern me gravely.
The Scottish Government says it doesn't comment on individual sentencing decisions, but opposition parties have raised concerns over the guidelines.
It comes off the back of the public outcry, I think, which followed what is clearly a lenient sentence that was handed out to a child rapist. I think the public mood clearly is that the only place for someone like that is in prison. Of course, we can't preempt the outcome of that appeal, but nonetheless justice must finally be served for the victims and her family.
The survivor at the heart of this case says she now has some hope that justice will be done. Ivana Holland, STV News.
The police watchdog, PIRC, has been ordered to carry out an investigation into the death of the pregnant teacher Morel Sturrock. This move comes as it's been confirmed the body of a man recovered from Mugdock Reservoir yesterday has been formally identified as David Yates. The 36-year-old, who was Ms Sturrock's partner, was wanted in connection with her murder. Well, our chief reporter Sharon Frew joins us now.
Well, PIRC carries out independent investigations into incidents involving the police. This can be for a variety of reasons that are considered to be in the public interest. We are being given very little information about why the watchdog has been called in to look at this case, the death of Morel Sturrock. A very brief statement this evening only confirms it has been instructed to do so by the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service, and the report will be submitted once the inquiries are complete. Morel Sturrock, who was 29 weeks pregnant, was found found dead in the Glasgow home she shared with her partner, David Yates, on Tuesday. David Yates was wanted in connection with her murder. He was last seen at Mugdock Country Park, and yesterday police divers pulled a man's body from the reservoir. That man has now been formally identified as David Yates. His death is not being treated as suspicious. Police Scotland say they will continue to provide specialist support to both families at this incredibly difficult time.
Sheldon, thank you. The Stone of Destiny has left Scotland for the first time in more than a quarter of a century, travelling to Westminster Abbey for its role in the coronation of King Charles III.
Also known as the Stone of Skin, the ancient symbol of Scottish monarchy has been on display at Edinburgh Castle since 1996. Our senior reporter Gordon Cree has the story.
Amid tight security and precise procedure, this was the moment the Stone of Destiny began its journey to London. It's a major effort for those carrying it out of the castle, their load weighing in at 160 kilos. The procession was overseen by the Lord Lion King of Arms, the monarch's representative. He's acutely aware of the history being made.
I mean, it's gone down south by Edward I at the end of the 13th century. It came back under our last queen, and it was meant to be an act of kindness when that came back. And now it's going south to the coronation of Charles III. And it's very significant indeed because it's an act of unity to see us all together and to celebrate our new monarch.
At Stirling University, this professor is leading a major research project into what the stone's significance is to people today.
When you look at the stone, it's an unprepossessing object, and yet it's a really ordinary object that is really awesome, and its meaning is what we project on it. So different people have different views of what that stone means and in different contexts.
For some, it has a magical role in a ceremonial occasion. The stone will be placed under the coronation chair when Charles is officially anointed as king, as it was when his mother was celebrated as queen in 1953. While for others, it's hugely politically charged, a symbol of grievance between Scotland and England after being seized in 1296 and taken to London, where it remained for 700 years, aside from 4 months in the 1950s when it was removed by a group of students. So the stone is now away from here for the first time in a very long time. After the coronation, it will be brought back in a similarly painstaking and high security operation. Then next year, it's on the move again, this time to a new permanent home in Perth, taking it closer to where the story began. Gordon Cree, STV News, Edinburgh.
The leader of the Scottish Conservatives has accused the SNP of crashing the case for independence. At his party's conference in Glasgow, Douglas Ross said his opponents lack any credibility as a result of their own blunders.
The Prime Minister also used his conference address to attack the SNP's record in government. Here's our political correspondent, Ewan Petrie.
This was Rishi Sunak's first address to a Scottish conference as Prime Minister. He told delegates the Conservatives will deliver for Scotland, in contrast to the SNP.
The SNP may not be able to find some auditors for their party, but we can certainly audit their record in government. Just take a look at the education attainment gap, the very thing that Nicola Sturgeon said that they should be judged on. That gap widening. Violent crime rising. And they can't even deliver the ferries that they promised the islanders. It is a record of failure.
His speech lasted less than 8 minutes, followed by a Q&A with Douglas Ross.
He answers the questions as honestly as he can, and he covered a wide subject, and he has the grip of what he's talking about.
I thought he was excellent, as always.
I don't know if we're the ones being unreasonable here. We actually
However, a planned Q&A with journalists descended into chaos after it appeared the Prime Minister would not answer their questions.
You're going to exclude all of the press.
After a long standoff, he finally agreed to speak to them.
Delegates here do have an extra spring in their step, buoyed by the recent turmoil within the SNP. But the party's leader has been forced to backtrack on his call for members to vote tactically at the next election.
But Douglas Rossi's speech focused on the SNP, accusing them of losing the trust of voters.
No one will ever believe a nationalist again on currency, on pensions, or on balancing the books. We've always known that our arguments on trade, currency and jobs were stronger, and the 2014 referendum proved that. But now the SNP lack any credibility. Through their own blunders, the nationalists have crashed the case for independence.
He announced measures on energy bills and education, and he said the party had to reach out to new voters.
We need to be the party of all of Scotland, focused on improving the lives of people up and down the country. We need to rise above the partisan interests to tackle the big challenges we all face and show the people of Scotland in every community across our country that the Scottish Conservatives are the ones who are focused on Scotland's real priorities. Thank you very much.
A standing ovation from delegates, but it's the verdict of voters that matters. Ewan Petrie, STV News.
Our political editor Colin Mackay was at the Scottish Conservative Conference too. So Colin, what was the mood like?
Well, you know, one of the big feelings that I detected across the Clyde was of glee at the problems in the SNP. The opening line of the Prime Minister's speech was that a lot had changed since the last Scottish Conservative Conference. Now, he wasn't even talking about the fact that he's the third Conservative Prime Minister since then, or that he didn't even win his own leadership contest. It's all about the SNP. It took up a large chunk of Douglas Rossi's conference speech, but he recognises that the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party has benefited hugely among voters from the polarisation of Scottish politics. And if that diminishes, he recognises also that he could face a fresh challenge from Labour.
Colin, thank you for that.
It's Scotland's largest cultural heritage project, and when the Paisley Museum reopens next year, it will feature ancient glass artefacts from Syria. A Syrian family who fled the conflict in the country in 2015 and have made Scotland their home have been working with curators to tell the stories of the items in the collection. Vanessa Taff has more.
2,000, 3,000 years ago.
A piece of home in Paisley. This Syrian family have been working with experts to bring to life the story of these 2,000-year-old glass objects.
It's really cool describing something like it has been invented 4,000 years ago. Some of the glass used like for mascara and like perfume, shampoo. They don't use like the regular shampoos, like just like soap.
Glass was invented in Syria 4,000 years ago and is a prominent feature in mosques and other buildings. These items in the museum's collection are extremely rare and special.
This is my dream to see that in Scotland, you know. I didn't see that before in my country, but I was happy to see that in Scotland. The Scotland like a second country for me. You know, maybe in the future, first country for me, you know, because the Syrians not safe this moment.
When the family fled the war in 2015, Heba was pregnant with their daughter. She's now studying and settling into their new family life.
Scotland is very beautiful, it's nice, it's people, it's very nice. I'm happy in here. Learning English, level 2, 3, 4, pre-intermediate, and I learning beauty, level 4.
Work to identify the cultural links between the glass and the Syrian community began in 2018.
It's their generosity and their knowledge about the collection that's really it's expanded our knowledge of the collections that we hold here and the stories that we can tell and the importance of the Syrian glass. So it's a long relationship, but it's one that we massively enjoy and we've really benefited from.
Construction on the £45 million project will finish this year. It'll celebrate the history and impact of Paisley on the world, as well as creating a new community space. These historical wonders can be viewed when the museum opens next year. Vanessa Taff, STV News in Paisley.
A 54-year-old man has been jailed for violent offences in Livingston. Charles Arthurs was found guilty of abducting and severely assaulting a woman in 2022. He was sentenced at Livingston Sheriff Court to 5 years in prison. Private nursery directors in the capital are calling for equal funding from Edinburgh Council to match the amount paid to state nurseries who are given funds by the local authority. They say council facilities are receiving £1,500 more per child, as Amy Flett reports.
With the cost of living crisis impacting businesses across the board, many are having to make the decision to cut expenditure in order to survive against competitors. But private nursery directors say they have been put at a disadvantage to council-run nurseries as they're receiving less funding, to the tune of £1,500 per child.
The goal is for a child to receive the same quality of care and education regardless of whether they attend a state setting or a private setting. If we're receiving a reduction in funding, less funding than our counterparts in the state sector, we're not able to resource, to provide the level of salaries at an equal position. It restricts what we have to offer to those children, and it adds a real challenge in being able to provide that high quality care.
Directors are calling for a review of the funding allocation and for better clarity on why state nurseries are receiving the extra money.
We don't understand why there's such a big discrepancy in that per child. It really will impact the quality of the care that we can give children, and we want to do that well. We want to really give those children the best chance they can have, but we're having our hands tied behind our back in this situation. We just need to understand why there is such a big discrepancy. It's been really difficult getting that information in previous years, and it's now reaching a crescendo. It's one of those situations where we need to understand because it doesn't appear to be fair.
The group representing nurseries in Edinburgh spoke at a committee meeting to voice their concerns, but ultimately feel the children will be the ones who suffer. Edinburgh City Council has confirmed there are currently no plans to increase funding for private nurseries, a decision bosses say will result in a real terms pay cut. Amy Flett, STV News, Edinburgh.
Staff at Gorgie Farm are asking the public not to give up hope as they continue to find a solution for its reopening. It was thought the farm would reopen earlier this year after the Edinburgh Voluntary Organisations Council stepped in to help, but staff say more work is needed to get the farm ready for the public again.
It's been really difficult, but we're doing our best, EVOC are in place to try and find a sustainable future for the farm. I think it is going to take a little bit longer than what everybody expected, which is the difficult part, because we miss how it used to be, we miss the animals. But I do have hope, and I think everybody else should have hope that one day the farm will be able to throw open the gates and everyone's favourite animal will be home.
I think what we're saying to people is stay with us, let's go slowly this time, let's listen to people, absolutely have our feet on the ground locally, but let's make sure the right people are in place to do that and take that leadership forward.
Well, time for the sport now. Here's Jamie.
Thanks, Emma. Good evening. Michael Beale is hopeful that Connor Goldson will be fit for Sunday's semi-final derby after the influential Rangers defender returned to training. Meanwhile, Ange Postecoglou has Jota and Rayo Hatate fit and available for the Hampden showdown, with Celtic chasing the treble and Rangers desperate to avoid a trophyless season.
Ask any manager and they'll say big games call for big players. Occasions don't get much bigger than an Old Firm derby at Hampden, and Connor Goldson's importance to Rangers is all too clear.
I think the centre-back positions had a lot of impact in our season. The amount of games Connor's missed this year compared to all the other years combined. He's our vice-captain, he's a big voice on the pitch, and when he plays, the results for the team, points per game and everything goes up, so it's nice to have him back.
Derby day disappointment has been an unwelcome fact for the Light Blues this season. Sunday, a chance to change those fortunes.
They don't have to prove anything to me, maybe to themselves and maybe to the fans for sure, and obviously that will to win, that's what they signed up for coming here. And you know, this season we're going to finish in second in the league. We've run us up in one cup competition, we want to go and win the cup. That's clear, and it will be bitterly disappointed if we don't.
It's a year since Celtic were last defeated by Rangers. A 2-1 defeat after extra time in last year's semi-final was a blow that Ange Postecoglou hasn't forgotten.
I think we used that as a sort of growing experience for ourselves to say, well, okay, we weren't successful on the day, not for the want of trying. We faced a really good opponent at the time, you know. Rangers were on their way to a European final, so it was a really strong team. And like I said, we lost an extra time, but you use that as an opportunity to develop and learn, and but also use it as a source of, you know, inspiration moving forward to try and make sure it doesn't happen again.
With visiting fans locked out of league derbies, Sunday will see an even split of supporters at the National Stadium.
I think it makes the atmosphere a lot better than obviously the league games. So you've got a small section or, you know, potentially no fans there, then makes it difficult for the away side. So this obviously being a neutral venue, you know, 50-50 split in terms of supporters, and hopefully that should make for a good spectacle.
The League Cup resides at Celtic Park, soon to be joined by the Premiership trophy. Sunday will go a long way to deciding the destination of the third and final major piece of Scottish silverware.
Well, John McGlynn says he may never have a better opportunity to coach a team to a major cup final as Falkirk prepare to face Inverness in the weekend's other semi-final. League One Falkirk go in as underdogs to Championship title-chasing Cally Thistle, and McGlynn is ready to embrace the occasion at Hampden.
You never know, as I said, you know, when you'll do it again, you know, when you'll get a realistic opportunity to do it, when you're not playing a Celtic or Rangers or Hibs or Hearts or Aberdeen, something like that, you know, where you're very much up against it. But, you know, with the greatest respect to Inverness, both teams wanted to draw each other, we did it, and now both of us have got an opportunity to get to a final.
We've got to realise how great an opportunity it is, and as I've said, Falkirk will be thinking the exact same, but we'll go there with high hopes, and we hope to make the final, but it's going to take a calmness, a good performance, a performance where I know what my boys are capable of doing, and if we do that, we've got a hell of a chance.
Rugby now, and emotional intelligence will hold the key to success for Glasgow Warriors, says head coach Franco Smith. His Warriors side travel to Wales to face Scarlets in the semi-final of the European Challenge Cup tomorrow as they aim to reach the final for the first time in their history.
There's a lot of buzz around it. It's about managing that emotional intelligence, so that's going to be important. You know, we want obviously a result, but it's how you channel that energy that's going to be important. So yeah, a lot of work still to be done until we kick off tomorrow, but we're looking forward to an interesting week.
Sticking with rugby, and Scotland women's captain Rachel Malcolm says to expect a dogfight when they finish their Six Nations campaign against Ireland tomorrow. The Scots are looking to record back-to-back wins in the Championship. More than 4,000 fans are expected at the match in Edinburgh, a new home record for the Scotland women's game. And that's all your sport for this evening.
Thanks very much for that, Jamie.
Now, Sean has the holiday weekend weather.
Get set for a wet spell. TUI sponsors STV weather.
A very good evening to you. We've held on to a lot of cloud for many of us today. Still some shower outbreaks. Have been pretty dreary conditions at times. Misty low cloud, although we've seen some cloud breaks a little bit further west, but also some misty weather at times around Kintyre, Jura and also Island. We may still see that coming going tonight. Now tonight, with the cloud cover for most of us, those temperatures should stay about 6 or 7 degrees Celsius, and we'll still hang on to outbreaks of rain. Now I've got a very mixed picture for you during the weekend. Not great, because we've got quite a few events this weekend. Of course, we'll have a look at them in a wee second, but a lot of cloud tomorrow. Outbreaks of showery rain for many of us. Misty conditions over higher ground. Best of any breaks in the cloud cover. I expect Arran, Kintyre, Jura, Isla, Call and Tiree, but temperatures very, very disappointing, especially where we've got the cloud. But Ayrshire, well, 13 or 14 degrees. If we get some little breaks in the cloud, hopefully not feeling too bad. Temperatures rise for most of us on Sunday, but it will be lots of heavy showers around, especially through the first half of the day. And that's not going to be great news on Sunday. There's your Sunday events here. We've got the Kilt Walk. We've also got the semi-final Rangers-Celtic game. Heavy showers, especially through the first part of the day. Quite a cool start for the Kilt Walk, but hopefully those showers becoming fewer and further between later on. And also the Pavilion Festival in Ayr. As I said, any cloud breaks, not feeling too bad, but fairly cloudy skies tomorrow. Monday, more showers. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV weather.
And finally this evening, you may have heard from Gordon earlier in the programme that in a tight security operation, the Stone of Destiny has now moved to London to play its role in the King's coronation. But has the stone actually gone?
No one can really be sure. There are many myths around the stone. One Glasgow pub claims it is the real Stone of Destiny. Well, Polly Bartlett has been to find out more.
It seems unlikely that such an extraordinary piece of history would end up here. But the owners of the Arlington Bar say this is the real Stone of Destiny.
I feel very privileged. You usually these things are in museums or in a cathedral somewhere or in a palace, and the fact that it's in a local bar is just it's rather nice, isn't it?
It feels like a privilege to be here, especially if it's hidden here, then it's amazing.
The stone has a history fit for a king. It is an ancient symbol of Scotland's monarchy, but in 1296 it was seized from Scotland and built into a new throne at Westminster Abbey. From then on, it was used in coronation ceremonies. But in the early hours of Christmas Day in 1950, 4 Glasgow University students removed the stone with the intention of bringing it back to its original home.
Stone of Destiny was stolen by Edward I in 1296. We retrieved it. You cannot steal what belongs to you.
My understanding is that the students who repatriated the stone in the 50s hatched the plot in the Arlington Bar, and subsequently, after they'd handed a stone back, brought this stone into the Arlington Bar. Cheers to the stone.
The stone is popular with tourists, locals, and local historians too.
So I've got a kind of vested interest in, local history, especially with some, the monument is good as that artefact sitting there. But I'm also kind of protecting it because there's a big coronation going down there. Don't want them to steal it again. So I'm up here to protect, just keep an eye on it. So it doesn't go back down there,
The ancient artefact will soon be tested to prove it's the real deal. And while one Stone of Destiny arrives in London to play its part in the celebrations, behind the bar here, staff are planning their own alternative coronation. Is this the real Stone of Destiny? Can you confirm?
Wholeheartedly. Of course I do. The provenance of this stone is as strong as the one in Edinburgh Castle.
And that's all the proof these patrons need that the king will be sitting on the wrong stone come coronation day. Polly Bartlett, STV News at the Arlington Bar.
Having a pint to protect the stone, I like it. The big question, is it the Stone of Scone or the Stone of Scone?
I mean, that's still up for debate, but I think the real question is it gone or gone? I think that's enough from us tonight.
It definitely is. Thank you for watching. Good night.
Bye-bye.